Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 241 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us. A big week of fights this week. By the time maybe you're listening to this, the Inoue Fulton will already be decided. Well, I'm fairly certain by then, at least. We gave our predictions on that fight last week. So if you wanted to hear a breakdown and a preview of the Inoue and Fulton fight in Japan, it's in our previous episode from last week, so go check that out. But jumping into this week, fight reviews this past Saturday, the 22nd of July, from the Fire Lake Arena in Shawnee, Oklahoma on ESPN. Former 135-pound champion George Kambosos Jr. gets the majority decision win over Maxi Hughes and becomes the IBO lightweight champion of the world. IBO getting a lot of credit, getting a lot of spotlight the last couple of weeks, so they're making a mark. Kambosos wins by scores of 117-111, 115-113, and 114-114, a draw. The third judge had it. So, if you've been on boxing social media and all that, this seemed to be very controversial to a lot of people. A lot of people felt that Maxi Hughes took the win. I actually caught this fight for a good portion of it. And I know we looked at I looked at the stats, the punch stats and all that, CompuBox. And I think in total punches, they were separated. I think it landed punches maybe by like 8 punches or so, less than 10, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't think this was, and then I think you might disagree with me, but I didn't think this was that much of a controversy. Am I wrong? I thought Kambosos, I don't want to say deserved the win, but well, yeah, I guess I could say he deserved the win. It wasn't a travesty to me. Am I wrong? Did I not see something? What do you think?
I thought Maxi won, but I thought it was close. I thought like a 116 or something like that to Maxi, I think would have won it. I think he won probably by like 2 rounds. I think the 117-111 to Kambosos was a pretty poor scorecard, and it seemed like they kind of favored George Kambosos because he's, the bigger name, and from what they've said, he's going to now be the mandatory for the IBF against Lemos. And I know that, pardon me, they were looking for a Lomachenko fight previously, but then that fell through, and obviously Loma ended up fighting Devin Haney. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like 90% of social media guys who like the boxing journalists, fans, YouTubers, stuff like that, all thought Maxi took it. And I don't think we can all be wrong, to the point where George Kambosos ended up taking the comments off of his latest posts. I think even Lou DiBella said, Kambosos was pretty much lucky to get the victory, but George is going to go on to bigger fights, and maybe later down the line, Maxi could get a rematch, and that's his own manager who pretty much said that George was lucky that night to get away with the victory. So I thought it was poor, but it was a poor fight to watch, to be honest with you. I think Kambosos' style and the Maxi style didn't gel overly well, which maybe made some of the rounds kind of hard to score because there wasn't really too much in it. But yeah, just unfortunate for Maxi. He's kind of always been the underdog, kind of always been like a little bit of a lesser name, always been the B side. And even though he kind of came in with the IBO title, Kambosos was the bigger name, right? Obviously been in the bigger fights, been, obviously ex-undisputed champion. So,
and he has a multi-fight deal with Top Rank now.
Yeah, I mean, it was just unfortunate for Maxi. I just think that you could just tell like how upset he was, Josh Warrington, his coach and stuff like that were just kind of looking. They were just like, this is why people don't like being the away fighter in some of these fights. It just wasn't a good look for boxing, on that night at all, because 90%, maybe even more than that. 95% of people thought Maxi took it on the night.
I mean, we've touched on this in the past with close decisions or quote unquote controversial decisions, depending on what it is. But I know it's easier said than done. It's easy for us to say, it's easy for anybody to say it. But when you go, I mean, I think everybody would agree that George Kambosos Jr. was the A side in this fight, just because he's been in the bigger fights. He's been the champion at 135 and all that. He's been on the bigger platform globally, essentially, especially the last several fights he's had. So, like as I mentioned, we've touched on this before. As the B side or the challenger, as the opponent, you have to take it from, even though there wasn't, well, there is a championship on the line here. But you have to take it from, I guess, the A side in a way. Obviously it's easier said than done, like I said, but if Maxi Hughes knocked him out, there's no controversy, because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it doesn't matter what the scorecards are. But I mean, it was obviously none of them could knock each other out. It wasn't that type of fight, but I don't know. Like I said, I agree with the 117, 111 that's definitely incorrect. I don't think Kambosos won that many rounds at all. But I could see the 115, 113. I landed on that. I don't think it was as crazy as people think, and like people have talked about, and even as recently as this one, just following this fight, people in the box community get upset, saying the judges' scorecards are corrupt. Something needs to be done. These judges need to go before, their respective commissions, or be demoted for several fights, and this and that. People have outrage for like a week, and then it goes away, and then the world moves on in the sport of boxing. That's the same thing that's going to happen here. It really is. It's the same thing that's going to happen here. When you have human beings, unless the only way you're ever going to try to, and I don't want to say completely fix something, but you might have more of a mathematical advantage, is, we're living in a world of artificial intelligence, AI. What if you replace all the judges, all the human judges, with AI in the future? Are people open to that? Instead of 3 human beings, you have some type of AI technology that scores it, and it's a little bit more fair because it's like a mathematical system, technological system. Is that what people want? Because when you're, as a human being, it's just like in baseball or basketball or football, soccer, any of those sports. The referees have made mistakes, especially in baseball. You have to call balls and strikes and all that, out calls, safe calls. It's gonna especially, and it's gonna happen in fighting. I'm not trying to give them, like a break here. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, like, that's the reality of it. There's outrage temporarily, and then it goes away, and people move on. What's going to happen? Are these guys going to go before the commission? Well, it hasn't happened yet, and we go through this a couple times a year. So, I mean, what do you think? Am I wrong here? Am I looking at it the wrong way?
No, but it seems to be the age-old thing about boxing, right? It's been going on longer than we've probably been alive, having these decisions and stuff like that. And I just don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's more training needed, whether it's a fresh pair of eyes maybe needed, whether we need to go from 3 judges to 5 judges to be able to kind of water out some of the cards which aren't as good on the day. Maybe we need to have a strict criteria, more like MMA, instead of, boxing, unfortunately, is kind of, what do you like as a judge? More than having a very strict laid out criteria, which they have to stick to. So I don't know. It's never going to be fixed at the minute. It's something that's, with all of the decisions that go on, even some of the, hugely controversial decisions like the Adelaide Bird card, nothing's ever been done about it. Right.
Exactly. Adelaide Bird's a perfect example. The Triple G, Canelo, All they did is they just kind of put her on lesser known cards, but she was still judging. And, it's like any PR for any company or agency, public or private. For example, this one just popped into my mind. Vince McMahon last year had the whole scandal with women coming out and it was leaked that he had paid women over the last 20, 25 years or so that he had affairs with or whatever and paid them off, an employee or this or that, paid them millions of dollars in a settlement. And then he announced that he was retiring and leaving the WWE, professional wrestling. And people thought, oh, okay, he's gone. But then you kind of read between the lines, he was still managing shareholder of the stock of the company and chairman of essentially chairman of their board of directors. How many months went by? A couple months went by and then he returned. So they kind of let the PR storm go by and then people forgot about it and didn't put any more energy into it and he came back. I mean, is that kind of relatable in terms of these situations for boxing? And I'm not saying in terms of exactly. I'm just saying like it's a PR storm and people wait it out. I mean, it is what it is. That's what happens. And it's unfortunate to an extent, but that's the nature of the world we live in. Controversy is there. I don't know.
You know what is interesting when you look at George Kambosos' career? When he fought Mickey Bay, split decision. Lee Selby, split decision. Teofimo Lopez, that was also a split decision. And then when he fought Maxi Hughes, majority decision.
So he's used to it, essentially.
It's just kind of crazy. You think with his style, come forward, kind of like pressure style, you didn't think he'd be in so many like close fights, right? But it's just strange that he's got the rub of the green, that many times, coming up. So I don't know. It's just a frustrating time, It was a frustrating weekend for boxing, I think.
Right, but I feel like we're a revolving door with that. It's gonna keep happening like that as long as the sport's alive. So Kambosos, as I mentioned, is now the IBO lightweight champion of the world. And what did you say at the beginning? That he's now in line for a shot at who?
Lemos for the IBF title if it becomes vacant. If Haney moves up, like people are kind of expecting him to do, to fight Regis Prograis or somebody like that, and the belts become vacant, he is now the number one and would fight Lemos.
Touching on Devin Haney really quick, what do you think? Do you think that he goes back to Eddie Hearn DAZN for that Regis Prograis fight? Because I mean, there's talk that he's, leaning towards that, or there's discussions at least. Is he vacating the belts at 135 and moving up to 140 to take a shot at Prograis' WBC title? And what do you think?
I think so, because I think if he stays at 135, I think he would get pushed towards Shakur Stevenson. And I don't think at the minute he wants any type of smoke with Shakur. I think someone like a Regis Prograis, a Ryan Garcia would be still a big payday and probably stylistically a better matchup for Devin.
Yeah, I could see that. Either way, both fights are dangerous, I guess. They are, but yeah, I'm excited. 135, 140 has been exciting for quite a few years now. And, these guys are now forced to fight each other. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. In the co-main event of this card in Oklahoma, Keyshawn Davis remains undefeated at 9-0 with a 10-round unanimous decision win over Francisco Patera. Patera was down in round 8 en route to the unanimous decision loss. What do you think about Keyshawn Davis's win?
I thought he gave Keyshawn some good work. I think Patera was there to make Keyshawn look good. He's still coming up, just only 9-0 so far. He was a solid veteran opponent for Davis. And I think it puts Davis into a good a good sort of light ready for the same thing. You know, if Devon moves up, he's at 135. I'm sure Top Rank would try to position him as soon as he could into picking up one of those titles. I'm sure Davis probably wanted to get him out of there just due to the fact, you know, with Cruz coming on the scene last week, kind of calling him out. I'm sure, you know, Keyshawn Davis has kind of been in the news headlines a little bit more, and he probably wanted to try to get Patera out of there, but he was a wily old veteran and gave Davis some well-needed rounds instead.
I like Keyshawn Davis, man. I'm a fan. How much longer do we see him? I think at least maybe two more fights before he's in there with somebody of note. Not like big note, but somebody where, okay, this is very, very, very good matchup. What do you think?
It's an interesting one because with his pedigree, you can kind of move him a little bit faster. And I don't know. I'm wondering if they're going to stick him in there maybe with Jermaine Ortiz, who fought Vasyl Lomachenko.
Oh wow, that'd be an interesting. I could see that. I could totally see that. And I mean, Ortiz has shown that he could fight. You know, beating Teofimo, was it Teofimo?
He's been in there with Lomachenko and Jamel Herring.
Jamel Herring. He beat Jamel Herring. I'm sorry. Yeah, we just had Jamel on a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, I could totally see that. But I like him. I like him. I think, you know, we've talked about Top Rank being able to find very good talent and working them up. You know, I think that's the same. The same goes for Keyshawn Davis. It works out. So yeah, I'm a fan, man, and I'm interested to see where he keeps going from here. Also on the card, former guest on the show, Giovanni Santillan, remains undefeated at 31-0 with a 10-round unanimous decision win over Eric Bone, who takes the 7th loss of his career. This also had some controversy. There was a lot of people on boxing social media and all that who felt that Eric Bone got the short end of the stick and maybe deserved the win. Are you in agreement with that opinion?
No. I thought it was close. I thought Santillan made it close. It was like he was stuck in one gear. Like he didn't really ever kind of like move it up. And Bone being similar to Patera, he just an experienced fighter. Got in there, kind of tried to like rough him up a little bit. And I don't know whether it's just Giovanni just couldn't get going or something like that, because I think we say every time he's been on, his career's been like kind of like super stagnant. You know, he was ranked super high in the WBO. Then COVID came. For some reason, maybe just due to like him not fighting that much during COVID or at all, I can't really remember. You know, he dropped down the rankings for the WBO, and then now he's kind of just like treading water. And I don't know whether that's kind of like affecting his performances. Getting in there with someone like Bone is not something that's really going to get you kind of like juices flowing, because he's 31-0. He's a good fighter. He's got a good style. It's just he couldn't seem to get into that 4th or 5th gear, in my opinion. So I think that's what he needs. I think he needs like a big name, a big fight, something on the line, which hopefully we'll see the best in him, because he's in a good gym, you know, ever since he's got his father and obviously Robert Garcia as well. You know, what better gym can you get, especially in Southern California with some of the sparring you can get down there? I think he just needs to be thrown in with someone else now, because, you know, how long is he just going to keep taking these kind of like middle of the road fights, you know, time after time after time? You know, now's the time. Look how much experience he's got. You know, there's 31 fights now, so.
That's a lot. He's kind of like Barboza, you know, these guys. Like, you know, you need something now, man.
I suppose I'm saying this, but at the same time, I guess the belts are kind of tied up. You know, he is right. He is in 147, so, you know, I suppose I should really, you know, point that out as well. Is, you know, Terence Crawford and Spence, unfortunately, have got a rematch clause, so you're looking at, at least a year. But I don't know, maybe you look at picking up like a WBA international, a WBO international, something like that, some type of trinket, which, you know, gets him up into the top 15, because he seems to have slipped down the rankings, and, you know, just stay busy, because I think that's what he needs. And I think that's what all fighters need. Don't sit and wait it out. Get in there, you know, and keep sharpening that iron.
You would hope. You would hope that's the mentality. I don't know. Maybe he might have to move up. All the titles are tied up. What are you gonna do? Boxing politics at its finest, right?
IBO.
Yeah. I'm like we just talked about. IBO's getting a lot of attention right now. They're everywhere right now. So, maybe they're trying to make a mark again and go for it. Be like, what is it, Chris Eubank Jr. when he was the IBO champion? He held it in high regard, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a world champion."
You might see because we're getting more often than ever undisputed champions. You may see a comeback of the IBO because what is a fighter going to fight for? In the 147 division when Crawford or Spence get all of the titles.
Right.
You may see more like IBO, flipping WBF, WBU.
It honestly, the one X factor to essentially legitimize a title like that is a major promoter and a major network to recognize it on a consistent basis.
It's funny because Triple G used to always carry it, and so did Joshua.
But they had it. But the thing is that, and you're right. I was going to bring them up, but they had them. They had those titles when they were like unified. So it was kind of lost in the shuffle. If they just had that one title and they were chasing the other ones, they're like, oh, I'm a world champion. I feel like it would have got a lot more individual attention. But because it was kind of lost in that shuffle, I think it was they didn't get the rub that they wanted from a marketing standpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we'll see how his career proceeds forward. Moving on to fight previews. So like I said, we touched on this last week. I guess we'll just give our quick picks again, just so for people who didn't listen last week, but we went in depth on this fight just because we knew we were going to release our episode fairly close to the fight because it is in Japan and it was going to be an early morning and all that. Tuesday morning in the United States, Stephen Fulton, 21-0 goes up against Naoya Inoue, the monster, 24-0. This is for the WBC and WBO super bantamweight titles of the world, which Stephen Fulton currently holds. So, real quickly, just to summarize your pick last week, give us what you're thinking.
I think Fulton's team, it doesn't seem like himself, but I think Fulton's team are trying to rock the boat, complaining about the hand wraps, complaining about the gloves, stuff like that. But I think Fulton himself is going to be, eyes on the prize. I think he's the bigger, I would imagine, stronger, got the bigger reach, very skillful fighter. I think Inoue just coming up being a little bit shorter, probably he's the more powerful fighter. But I think Fulton is fit enough to be able to last the 12 rounds and keep Inoue at bay. I think he's just going to keep him. He's going to keep him moving, going to keep him twisted and turning, not let him get set. Every time he does get set, I think Fulton will be on his toes. He'll be in and out of range. And I think it could make maybe for a little bit of a boring fight because Fulton will be boxing on the outside. But that's his road to victory. That's his path to victory if he wants to keep hold of his WBC and WBO super bantamweight titles. I think this will be just a step too far for Inoue, for the monster. But he's a great fighter and he's dared to be great. Like we always say, he's dared to be great.
I agree. Yeah,
this is going to, for people in the US, it's going to be on ESPN Plus, 4-fight telecast beginning at around 4:30 a.m. Eastern. So
1:30 Pacific on the West Coast. So, assuming we're just guessing here, main event might be around 6:30 ish, maybe 2 hours into the telecast or something like that. I'm sure it'll come out in the next couple hours or so. But yeah, I think I agree. Fulton, I think Inoue, he's daring to be great, like a Canelo and all these other fighters who dare to be great like that. But I think Inoue, even though he's an excellent fighter, arguably the best pound for pound fighter in the world, I think it's just, you're going to keep moving up. Eventually, you're going to hit your ceiling. And I think he's going to hit his ceiling at super bantamweight, especially fighting somebody as talented as Fulton. So I'm going Fulton here as well. I think Fulton stops him. I think he knocks him out. Yeah. Yeah. I just don't see a decision. I don't see this going full 12 rounds. I don't. So, especially with Inoue. Inoue always tries to go for it. Like he goes for it. And I think Fulton's just going to have to play with the fireworks and go at it too. So, yeah, I think we're both going Fulton. But if Inoue takes it, man, can't wait to talk about that. Also this upcoming Friday, the 28th of July, from the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, once again on ESPN Plus, Seniesa Estrada 24-0 goes up against Leonela Paula Yudica 19-1. This is for the WBA and WBC minimum weight title. What do you think about this fight?
I think it'd be a good fight. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Estrada, one of my favorites to watch in the women's side of boxing. I think it's going to be a good fight, good idea from Top Rank to stick it, the day before in Las Vegas, because obviously the next day you've got the super fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. So pretty clever of them. Hopefully it'll attract a good crowd. I think Estrada takes this. I don't think Yudica's really fought anybody as good as Estrada so far. If you actually look at her resume, she's actually fought the same girls over and over again. She's fought some people like 2 or 3 times. Her only loss came last year against Areli Musinho, which was a split decision. I think Estrada will get in there. I think it will go the full 10. But I think, Estrada will win quite comfortably on points.
Yeah. I think she's shown that she's definitely levels above a lot of her opponents over her career. But, getting main event opportunities here with Top Rank on ESPN. So, she had a long career with Golden Boy Promotions and Oscar De La Hoya, but, they separated and she went over with Top Rank and seemed like it's working out. So good for her and her team. All right. Probably the most anticipated fight of the year, at least to me. In terms of 50-50, man, this is it. This upcoming Saturday, the 29th of July, from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, on Showtime pay-per-view. Errol Spence Jr., the unified welterweight champion of the world, 28-0, goes up against the WBO welterweight champion of the world, Terence Crawford, 39-0. All right. Help me out here. What do you think? Break it down for me.
So ever since it's been announced, I just keep thinking Crawford. I think Crawford's just more well-rounded. I think he has that spite in him. He has that dog in him, that he can kind of reach down into the trenches and just kind of win. I think he's got more ways to win as well. I think he's just a lot more well-rounded than Spence. He seems to take the sport more professionally than Spence, with obviously him being in 2 car crashes. Also, we've seen him at events drunk. Whereas I think Crawford just seems to, live and breathe boxing. As soon as he's had a fight, you see him, he's back in the gym, he's helping Shakur Stevenson, he's in there with Keyshawn Davis, all these up and coming fighters. He fights Saturday night, boom, he's back in the gym on Monday helping somebody else, taking some of these young kids under his wing and kind of guiding them down the path. And I think just all of that together, I think, just means to me, I think Crawford will take it, even though he seems, smaller. I think Spencer's got the reach advantage as well. I just think Crawford's so well-rounded. And I think if he gets Spence hurt, he just jumps on people. And there's not many people in boxing that manage to finish people when they're hurt, just like Crawford does. He jumps in it and he gets it done time after time after time. And I'm glad that we get to see it, because to me, so far, I think he needed somebody like Spence on his resume just to prove to us what we all think he is. Because, he's not had that many big names on his resume so far. And kind of the ones that he has done, like Amir Khan and Nickel Brooks, unfortunately, they were towards the end of their career and they were pretty washed up by the time they'd actually met him.
I'm gonna stay consistent, which you should. I've been picking Spence ever since both of their names started to been associated years ago. And I've been picking Spence because of the resume of opponents. You know, we talk about Canelo over the years and all these other guys who's pound for pound. Like, it's not that I don't agree that Crawford is talented. He's immensely talented, but I never had Crawford number one, and I never felt Crawford should have been number one on pound for pound list because he didn't have the resume of opponents. And it wasn't his fault. It was just the boxing politics. He did what he did to the opponents that he had because he was so good. Like, you could see it. And people say, like, oh, well, Spence didn't do this to so-and-so. He didn't do this to so-and-so. But Spence overall has fought the higher caliber of opponents. You know, they both fought Sean Porter, and Crawford did stop him. But, I mean, you know, it was a good fight on both sides. Spence fought Danny Garcia, Yordenes Ugas. You know, I've always had Spence above Crawford in a mythical pound for pound. I've always had him because of the resumes of opponents. You know, he's fought and it was obviously he was in a better position because he was under the PBC banner, and Al Heyman had all the welterweight champions, all the big names at welterweight, and Crawford was on the outside looking in up until recently when he got out of the top ranked contract and made the fight himself and had to go over there. But I'm going Spence, man. I'm going Spence. I think. See, and this one, like Crawford, a lot of these Crawford fights end in knockouts because he stops these people. So it's like, and like you said, I agree that I think Crawford has the more killer instinct. Like when he has you hurt, he goes for it. He does. You visibly you could see it, but can he do that to Spence, who's been in there with heavy hitters and talented individuals at 147 pounds? So I mean, especially coming after he had that horrible car accident where he could have easily died, and he came back. And I think his first fight back after the accident was it Sean Porter?
Danny Garcia, wasn't it?
Was it Danny Garcia? I mean, come on. You know, you got to give him a ton of credit for that because people thought like, oh, he's never going to be the same. Look at how he rebounded. Like, that's impressive. It's very impressive. You got to give him a ton of credit for that and the grit and the determination he had in recovery and all that. But yeah, I'm going Spence, and I think Spence out. I don't want to say completely outboxes him, but he gets a decision. Spence has been involved in more decisions in his life throughout his wins and his professional career so far, whereas Crawford, you know, I mean, he stops you. If he sees a moment, he goes for it. But I think I'm giving the edge to Spence here. But like I said, this is 50-50, man. This is like 50. You know, if you want to lean it one way or the other, it's like maybe 50.5 to 50. I don't know, 1 or so. I don't know. It's a 50-50 fight. It really is. It is unfortunate that this fight isn't really getting the mainstream appeal that a lot of bigger fights back in the day used to get. Because this fight deserves it. These are two of the best fighters in the world at one of the most lucrative divisions of the world. And they're going up against each other on a big platform. But it's not, they did. And I know they were on their respective, like they were on certain YouTube shows and podcasts and all that, which I understand, but you don't see these guys on like mainstream shows and stuff like that anymore. Like you don't see that many fighters on there anymore. You don't see fighters on mainstream shows anymore. Or, like how cool will it, like Spence lives in Texas. Why not put him on Joe Rogan? You don't think Joe Rogan would have been like, oh yeah, he's fighting Crawford. Oh yeah, he lives here in Texas. Joe Rogan he's there in Texas. And I get it. Maybe people yelling at me through their car or their phone or whatever they're listening to earbuds. Spence is, he has to dedicate his time to training to go and prepare for the biggest fight of his life. Okay, I understand that. But you can't take one day one day to go with. I mean, Spence is from the Dallas area, and I think Rogan films in the Austin area. I mean, I don't know how, I don't know if you know, but I don't know how many hours away they are from each other. It's probably a couple hours. Maybe he can charter it. I don't know. He gets there some way or some form. He's a lot closer than other people, obviously, but why not put Spence on Joe Rogan? One of the biggest platforms, and Joe Rogan's a fight fan. I think he's had Crawford on before. I think he's had Terence Crawford on his podcast before. Why not throw Spence on there? Like that's all they could have needed. Just throwing one of them on there, preferably Spence, because he hasn't been on, and have Joe Rogan promote that fight. With the fighter on. But it is what it is. It is what it is. We can complain about that all day, but either way, it doesn't take away from the fact this is, from the competitive standpoint, this is going to be an excellent fight. I'd be surprised if it's a boring fight. This is one of those fights where you go out on a limb and say, no, this is going to work. This is going to work. But yeah, I'm going Spence. I'm going Spence by decision. I'm going Spence by split decision. Majority decision, split decision, whatever. And in terms of pay-per-view buys, I think it does in the 500. What do you think?
It's going to be interesting what it does because of, like you said, like Spence and Crawford are pretty poor salesmen. They're not the best interview. Crawford doesn't really like doing media, it seems. And then also you've got one of the biggest UFC cards of the year, on the same day.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that.
So it's going to be interesting to see how much that affects the pay-per-view numbers, because who's going to want to pay for both of them? $80 for the UFC, and is this $80 as well, or is this did they increase this one?
I think it's more. I think if I remember correctly, it's like 89 or 85 or something. So
yeah, like you said, they haven't really sold it. We're looking on Fight Week. Hopefully they start ramping it up now because I think it's going to need it, because if you're a boxing diehard like we are, you know how good the fight's going to be. But if you're a casual, you want those moments where Crawford and Spence get in each other's faces and that kind of like WWE drama. But yet so far we haven't really had anything.
Nothing.
And like you said, they're not going to cross over to the mainstream type audience because they're not on these daytime talk shows. They're not doing this, that, or the other. And I know, obviously, like you touched on, they should be in camp. They should, but at the same time, when it's a pay-per-view, that affects how much they're going to get. You still saw Wilder and Fury doing that, and that their fight, all those fights were amazing. They both got up off the canvas and stuff like that. So, they do still have to try to sell the fight. So,
I mean, I could be wrong. We're recording this on a Monday. This episode on a Monday, the fight week of Spence-Crawford. I could be wrong. By the time this comes out, or by the time this week proceeds forward, Spence or Crawford, I think they might both be in Vegas now, though. I'm not sure. Maybe they're on Joe Rogan this week or some big format like that. I know they've been on like others. I know Spence was on something else and stuff like that, but I don't know. You're right. Like I just get on a big platform, like a universal platform that people are you're going to push the fight. But maybe I don't know. It's unfortunate, but I for sure think I'm fairly positive that this doesn't beat the pay-per-view number of Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, because Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia had a lot more mainstream attention and a lot more mainstream appeal because of their network of each other. Ryan being a social media star and being included with all the Paul brothers and all these other social influencers, and then Tank Davis with his fan base and all that. So it definitely doesn't beat Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. But I do think it does between 4 and 5. I think it does. I think it does. It does in the 500s. If it does anything less than 4, I view that as a complete failure. even though they might make money off of it still, like if you do the math and all that, well, I haven't done the math in my head or I haven't done it, but if they do less than 4, I think people are going to call it a failure regardless, but like, I think it has to do at least over 5 for people to, any reasonable person to say like, okay, this was a success pay-per-view wise. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like between 4 and 5. I don't think it's not got the eyes of like a heavyweight. Wilder and Fury did what, 750, something like that, reportedly. So I don't think it's going to reach that sort of levels. So I think like 400 or 500 just due to, both of them aren't huge, in doing the social media, doing interviews. You got a huge UFC pay-per-view on the same day. And then just streaming. It's so easy to stream stuff nowadays. That takes away God knows how many numbers from the US and the UK audience because it's so easy. You could just jump on Twitter and type in, like Crawford, Spence stream. And 2 seconds later, you've got all these different links to click on to watch the fights for free. So unfortunately, that takes a lot of money out of the fighters' pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's obviously a 2-way rematch clause with both of them. I fully see if Spence wins, I think it's a more likely of a chance that he doesn't check off the rematch clause because I think Spence is ready to move up. He's been ready to move up to 154. So I think Spence, especially if he wins, especially if it's without controversy, but I think whether he wins even with controversy, I think Spence is moving up to 154. I think he's like, no, I did it. He's like, I made the fight. I beat the guy they wanted me to beat. I'm going to move up and take over 154. So I think if people are hoping for a rematch, I think they better hope that Crawford wins and Spence enacts the rematch clause. Because I don't see Spence, if he wins, I don't see him doing a rematch. Unless, there could be, because there's a ton of money on the table. There is. There could be. I could be wrong, but I think Spence is just like, he's been ready to move up. He's a big kid. They were offering him to Canelo a couple years ago at a catch rate of like 164 or 65, in a potential deal with PBC when Canelo left Golden Boy. But yeah. And then in terms of people saying like, oh, who's this shows the best pound for pound fighter in the world. Yeah. If in a way, obviously by the time people start listening to this is, that fight's going to be already done. But if Inoue wins this week against Fulton, and he, especially if he knocks him out, like he's been knocking out a bunch of people throughout the weight classes, you can't dispute that Inoue is the best fighter in the world, pound for pound, whether it's a mythical list or not. Even if one of these Spence or Crawford wins. Am I right? What do you think? Inoue, best pound for pound in your opinion, or is it Spence-Crawford the winner?
That's a good. Yeah, if Inoue does manage to beat Fulton, then he has to be up there. I still think you can't really take it away from Canelo because he's not just doing it in a mythical way; he's doing it literally. Moving from like 154, 160, 168, 175. Obviously, he got schooled by Bivol last time out, but look at the size discrepancy. He was trying to do things that we talk about in real life, like he literally was trying to be pound for pound, but just doing it at his natural size. So, I still think you can't look too far away from Canelo. And then obviously on the come up so far, like he's blazing a trail, is Shakur Stevenson. I don't think he is there yet, but he's definitely on his way.
Yeah, absolutely. Either way, this is a great fight. It's a great fight. And if it does, like I said, I think it does in the 5s, but I'm guessing over 4. But if it does like 200 and the 250, like I think even though they might still make money off of it, I think that's looked at as a huge failure. And I get it. The fighters are the ones. Steven Espinoza of Showtime, I think, went on back and forth with somebody on tighter pay and people talking about like, you're charging $90 or whatever, the financial section of boxing. And then the fighters, obviously, they're putting the risk and, they should get a big bulk of the money. They should, especially if they're bringing in, like, people are tuning in for them. I understand that. Mayweather, De La Hoya, all them, Pacquiao, Canelo, they've trailblazed those pathways, and even before them, Tyson, whatever. But are you going to alienate the fan bases, especially the hardcore boxing fan bases, who are the ones who are being targeted for this fight, essentially? Because people are like, oh, well, we're not, you're charging too much, you're doing this, and then the tickets to go to the arena in Vegas are like the cheapest one so far that I've seen, at least. And Mike, it is third party, but like, they're $800, $900, and in the thousands, 5,000. It's unaffordable. It really is. But I mean, a lot. Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis was the same thing. It's more bang for your buck for these promoters and networks. They're trying to get their return on investment. That's what it is. So, that's not going to change. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. But
that's why it was crazy when we posted about Usyk fighting Daniel Dubois in is it Poland, because they couldn't fight in the Ukraine, and tickets were $20.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, but you also got to look at that side of the world. It's a little different. The United States, people, that's why fighters want to make it in the United States. You can make it in the UK and have a really good career like Anthony Joshua and those guys, but if you want to be like a global star, you have to make it in the United States. That's your bread and butter. But it is what it is. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited. This is a fight. They're putting in the marketing tagline, fight of the century, fight of the decade, or whatever. It's got a pretty good shot. Errol Spence, Terence Crawford were finally here. It's been years. They've been, dancing around each other, on different sides of the street. I think even Spence at one point saying like, he has to cross the street to make the fight. They've said it, and Crawford, he had to do what he had to do. So yeah, I'm excited, man. So you're going Crawford, I'm going Spence, and I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about that fight after. In the co-main event, Isaac Cruz, 24-2-1, goes up against Giovanni Cabrera, 21-0. This is for the vacant WBC silver lightweight title. I think ever since the Davis fight, they've really been keeping Cruz like involved in a lot of these, prominent events, but they really haven't put him in any type of situation against a credible opponent. And it could be this one, but ever since the Davis fight, I think they're trying to build him up again to get a rematch with Tank Davis. I think that's the plan. Get the Mexican fan base and all that. I don't think they expected Cruz to do so well when he came in as a replacement for Davis. I mean, am I wrong? What do you think?
No, I don't think you were wrong at all. I think this is a carefully selected fight. If you remember, Cabrera recently beat Gabriel Flores Jr. by unanimous decision about a year ago. I think it was July 2022 that those two fought. Cabrera's not heavy-handed, only 7 knockouts in 21 fights. So I think this is a carefully selected fight. I think Isaac Cruz will just be too strong, too powerful, too much pressure, and I think he ends up taking Cabrera out. And I think it'll be a good performance from him. I think he'll look really, really good. And if you're right in what you think, PBC and Showtime are trying to put Cruz and Davis back on collision course, I think it's a very good opponent they've chosen, because I think Isaac Cruz will look really, really good against Cabrera, and I think he'll knock him out in probably 7-8 rounds.
Yeah. So, and I mean, they want to keep it as in-house as possible. Cruz is definitely going to get a shot at Davis again, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. I'm just really interested to see who Davis fights next after Ryan, because it was such a big event against Ryan. But I don't know who you going to see next.
He's currently fighting the law.
Yeah. Well, I think that battle's done. I think he got released. So I think for now he's done, unless he's on probation or something. But also on the card, legendary Nonito Donaire, the Flash. Nonito Donaire, 42-7, goes up against Alexandro Santiago for the vacant WBC Bantamweight Championship of the World. Donaire's still going. What do you think? Does he still got it?
I don't know, dude, because you count against him, right? You know, like he went in there against Inoue back in, man, what was that fight when they fought the first time? Was it 2019? Yeah, 2019.
First fight was excellent.
You kept thinking, you're like, you know what? I just hope Donaire doesn't get knocked out. You know, Father Time's catching up with him. He loses over 12 rounds, then comes back, knocks out Ubale in 4, then knocks out Gabayo in 4. Then you see the rematch against Inoue, which unfortunately Inoue won, in just 2 rounds that time. He managed to get a TKO over Donaire. And then Donaire's back again 13 months later for the WBC strap against Alexandra Santiago. I think, man, it's hard because I'm gonna go Donaire. I think he hopefully has one last performance in him. This is going to be his 50th fight. I'm going to be romantic here. I hope Donaire wins in Las Vegas on his 50th fight, gets the WBC Bantamweight World title, and then takes his gloves off, walks off into the sunset. And I know I'm being romantic, and that's not
a storybook ending. I agree. I think that'd be great. You're right.
Because, and I know that never happens, because obviously, like, once he gets the WBC title, his next purse is going to be even bigger. And just like everyone else in the world, just like we'd be like, oh, wow, you know, I could do with an extra $400,000, $500,000. But, you know, Father Time is undefeated. You know, I think it's time that hopefully, if he can get that romantic, sweet ending, just take it.
That'd be excellent. Yeah.
He's based in Las Vegas, in front of his home crowd, essentially.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. I think that's the ideal scenario. I'm always going to be Donaire's awesome. I've interviewed him. He's great. He's a legend. But yeah, if he goes out on top like that, what a story. What a story that would be. But we'll see. We'll see what he still has in the tank. News and notes section of this week's episode of the Last Round podcast. Luis Alberto Lopez will defend his IBF featherweight title against Joet Gonzalez on September 15th in Corpus Christi, Texas, according to ESPN. Corpus Christi, Texas getting a fight. When's the last time they got a fight, you know? It's a pretty big metropolitan area, too. So I feel like that fan base or the residents down there will show up to that fight. Because like, oh, we got a fight. I know it's ESPN. I think if they'll show up and then it'll show all these other promoters like, hey, maybe we should go there. Like Golden Boy, who does a lot of fights in Texas or Southern California and stuff. I think Corpus Christi is gonna have a good turnout. So I'm excited for that. And Joet Gonzalez gained a lot of opportunities ever since he went to Top Rank. So good for him. But he's been coming up on a losing end for quite a few of them. So let's see where he goes. Now he gets another shot at the IBF featherweight world title. I mean, I'm pulling for Joet here, man, because you know he's a local guy here in Southern California. I'm pulling for him, man. He's been on the short end of the stick quite a few times on world title shots. So let's see how he does. But I'm definitely pulling for him. And then Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions has signed a Hollywood actor, and I guess he's a boxer too. He's had an amateur career, a pretty impressive one too. Javon Walton. Wana's the nickname. They've already kind of promoted this and kind of thrown this out there the last day or so. Walton is best known for his role on the HBO's Euphoria. And like I said, he has an accomplished amateur boxing career already that includes more than 80 bouts, multiple junior amateur tournament victories, and 5 Georgia state championships. So People who think like, oh, this guy's just an actor, he's just a YouTube boxer, they're going into the Jake Paul team. Just looking at that, reading his resume like that, he's a fighter. He's a fighter. So I'm interested to see. I know some people who are watching Euphoria. It's a popular show. I haven't watched it, but it is popular. So that could help bring in a fan base. And I think it was a smart move for Jake Paul to sign him because he brings in that fan base. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. So Walton has been competing at 125 pounds. And he's only 17 years old. So he's still very young. He still has some time to develop in the pros. And it's going to be a couple years before he really gets a big, significant fight. But people will probably still tune in because of the fan base he has as an actor. And I mean, if you can call this some type of milestone, this is Jake Paul's promotion's most youngest signing up until this point. But I mean, they really haven't signed that many fighters. But they're still in their infancy. So. But as of right now, this is the youngest fighter they have signed. Walton has also appeared in major roles on streaming hits The Umbrella Academy and Samaritan. He already has more than 5 million followers on Instagram and 13 million followers across all social media platforms. So according to some of the press releases and all that other stuff, the plan is for him to make his professional debut sometime in 2024. I think from a business perspective, I think this was smart on Jake Paul. The kid's an actual fighter with a pedigree and a resume that has shown that he's serious about it. And he's an actor who's actually been on significant shows and Hollywood productions. So there's a fan base there that'll tune in just to see who won't even be boxing fans. So yeah, I think it's a very, very strategic signing. And then also, while a unification bout at Wembley Stadium against Tyson Fury is no longer in the cards, Alexander Usyk could still compete under the lights after swapping his boxing gloves for football boots and signing a contract with Ukrainian club Palasia. Did I say that right?
That's what I would have said. Yeah.
So he's playing soccer now, or what? What's going on here?
Yeah, it looks like he signed a 1-year agreement with the club. I believe he played in a friendly match before, and they were quite impressed with his talent. And they've said that he'll wear the number 17 shirt. So I'm sure it's more of a marketing type of stunt, and he'll play like in a couple of friendly games and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm sure we want to see him take the football boots off, put the gloves on, and get in there with Tyson Fury before the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll see. We will see. But once again, guys, we appreciate you guys listening to this week's episode of the Last Round Podcast. Big week of fights. Inoue, the Monster, and Stephen Fulton in Japan this week. I'm very excited. That's probably in a little over 24 hours or so, at least here in the United States on ESPN. Is it going to be on ESPN or ESPN Plus?
ESPN Plus, they say.
Oh, okay, so for you listening, if you guys are listening to this before it comes on or during or whatever, it could most likely is after. Can't wait to talk about that fight and review the outcome. And then you got Spence-Crawford this Saturday in Las Vegas on Showtime pay-per-view. Yeah, that's a fight, man. 50-50, as close as you can get, in the last 10 years or whatever. Since we've been boxing fans, this is a fight, man. This is it. So I'm definitely excited for that. So for my co-host, Michael Shepard, actually, no, I forgot. Go ahead and let them know, Mike, where they can find us and follow us before we completely sign off once again.
We are at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. Be sure to join us next week. We'll be previewing Amanda Serrano and Heather Hardy. But next week's show, we'll be looking forward to Anthony Joshua, Dillian White, Emmanuel Navarrete, and Oscar Valdez. So don't miss that one.
Don't miss that one. And like I just said, in a review of Inoue Fulton and Spence-Crawford. Very excited for both of those matchups. So for my co-host, Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is the last round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.